LeBron has a coach. Kobe had a mental health coach.
Yeah.
Presidents have life coaches, and that really helped me break that wall down. Like, who am I to think that I don't need a coach or a therapist or someone to just help me organize this upstairs? I've had a big shift in how I approach life now, to be honest. And it pretty much all started when we started to grow our family. Would you say that there's at least a little bit more anxiety and depression, going on, and substance abuse, whatever, in our nation than, say, 10 years ago? And then just about everyone says, like, yeah, I would think so. So the follow-up is like, what do you think's contributing to that? Go.
A lot of nurses in the Southern California...
Don't do it.
The Southern California area. A lot of nurses have gone through this gentleman right here. He teaches mental health nursing, and he's the... Dude, forgive me, man.
All truth so far, but go ahead.
I'm going to say it, man. He's one of the most sought after mental health instructors that I've ever known.
Oh, man.
Especially in my career. And we go way back. I want to welcome Professor Edmund Alfonso. Welcome, brother.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Jeez.
It's a long time coming, man.
Yeah.
Finally, we find time in between terms. I'm probably not gonna mention the school we work for, but we go way back. And it's funny because a lot of my students know that. I always say that, I always have them raise their hand. Who has a Professor Alfonso? But we go way back, even from nursing school, and combined us two together, we have a couple decades already of being in the mental health field as a nurse, but also as a nurse educator.
Yeah.
So I want people to see a side of you that they usually don't see, if anything. I know my students always say that he's got the energy for days. For every lecture, he's got energy for days. And I know that, no matter what they see on the screen or up in the front of the room, there's a lot more to you than people know, of course. But I wanted to ask you, this is for me too.
Yeah.
Did you want to do mental health when you were in nursing school, or did you?
No, actually, when I finished school, I did not really know too much. All right, I probably had a top 5. Mental health was up there, ER, peds, ICU. Shoot, even L&D looked more interesting than like med surg. I'll be honest.
Wow.
Yeah, that's something I joke around with my students. I'm just like, anything but med surg. And then had some friends working at a hospital just 7 minutes from my house, and shot off one job application. That's one that I brag about. That out of nursing school, only sent out one job app. Got an interview, and then orientation shortly after that. But yeah, mental health was interesting. I did do my clinical rotation at this hospital, and I did see some things that were memorable. So I was absolutely open to it. Absolutely loved the commute. And was excited to start, but it was there at my first psych hospital that I was like, dang, I could see myself doing this for maybe another 300, 400, 500 years. Like, really? Is how I felt about it. Yeah, to be honest.
Was it the hospital that we ended up working at?
Yeah, okay. It was.
Dude, I think I had a totally different take on it, but I was there as a student too for clinical, and dude, after that rotation, I was kind of like, nah, no way, which is weird. Honestly, I think I got desperate when we graduated. I was applying everywhere, but everyone that was hiring at that time was hiring for NOC, and I couldn't do NOC shifts, man. So I applied to the same hospital we were, obviously we worked at, and they offered a pretty good starting pay for new grads.
At the time, it was awesome.
What was it about that rotation that made you feel like you could do it, or made you want to do it?
You know what? I'll share one. In this one, I've not told all my students, but every now and again it would come up during my rotation, and all of us students were freaking out. We're nervous, like, this person's gonna bite us. This person's like taking their clothes off, right? So me and my my classmates were just sitting in one of these group therapy sessions, and they had this young guy. Maybe I'll put him at about 25, sub 30 for sure. He's like 25, and he's kind of leading this group. So I understand now it was kind of like a goals group thing. He wasn't like a therapist. He was more just like probably an MHW, just doing like the morning goals group. And he went around to everybody, and you, for sure, we can all picture a really damp atmosphere. Everyone's pissed off that they're there. Everyone's sad. No one's talking. Everyone's scared of each other.
First thing in the morning.
Yeah. And then this guy comes in, this young guy, and he's like, all right, we're gonna do this group today, everybody. You know, we're gonna go around. We're gonna say hi. Tell us your name. You know, and like what your goal is today. I don't remember all the details, but then what I do remember is, you know, he'd go from person to person, give them the time, and say like, hey, what's your name? How are you feeling today? What are your goals? Some of the clients would be responsive, like, oh yeah, I want to get better. Oh, I want to, you know, better my marriage, blah blah. But he'd get to a number of people that like clearly did not care to be there, or just like their mind is somewhere else.
Yeah.
They're not in a good place. They're not feeling good, and he'd still, you know, give them the time and be like, yeah, okay, you know, we can give you some time, think about your answer, and then whatever it was, a good answer, bad answer, lame answer, he was like, okay, well, thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. And everybody clapped for it. And man, it just really stuck with me that somebody was putting in this effort in the face of like, oh, this isn't doing anything for anybody, right? Is how it might have looked.
Yeah.
But he still was giving it 100%, right? And it's like nothing could get him to stop doing his best or giving that kind of good energy to others, like no matter how crappy everything kind of looked. And in my mind, I'm just like, holy moly, this guy is like killing it, right?
Yeah.
And then after, right, it wasn't too eventful. It's not like anyone was cheering or anything. I mean, everyone clapped politely when, you know, for each client. But later, the day, I don't know, 5 hours later, two or three clients came up to him and was like, hey, you know, us and the others, we're all having like a super crappy day. But today, we've been having like a crappy week, but today's been a lot different. We've all been feeling like better, just like kind of having a good day, even though we're still all going through crap. And we all talked, and we think it was, you know, big thanks to you for how you kind of started our day. And yeah, so we just wanted to say thank you. Yeah. And I had just been sitting, you know, 10 feet away, and I was just like, like, holy crap. And right away, I was like, this is helping people. I was like, that is to me the definition of helping people through your passion and profession. And man, that memory, if I'm going to be honest, because that's what we're doing today, being honest, over so many years of me kind of revisiting it and telling it, I've probably decorated the story a little bit, but
as we do, as instructors.
But that's absolutely the meat of it. And man, one that always sticks with me and always kind of gets my nerves going and my energy going whenever I revisit that. But yeah,
and we would probably say this is what, 2010, 2011 back then as students.
Yeah,
dude, working in the mental health field especially, you do come across those super genuine people that, regardless of whatever people say, like credentials and all this stuff, like I've witnessed it too, that all it was a simple interaction with a patient and a staff member that showed me how simple it is to, whatever it is, be good to people, bring goodness to people. And we've worked with amazing people over the years. And I mean, I think it's because as a student, I had the afternoon shift. It was like, dude, it was the worst. It was the worst shift, but it was 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. On a Saturday, dude. So then I think I got, you know, whatever, the part of the day that everyone's already irritable. Yeah. Especially even the staff, like they're ready to go home or whatever. Yeah. The PM shift is about to start. But yeah, there was something about that rotation that made me think, well, maybe I could do it. It's not my first choice or whatever, but when I started working at the place that we're talking about, I definitely came across people, and it was at the ready to see how you can serve people in your simple way. You know, you ended up being a mental health instructor, and I would argue, and I always tell my students this, some of the best communicators that you'll come across in life, in your field of nursing, a lot of them have done psych or mental health. And I think it's because we've worked with maybe some difficult situations, difficult people in difficult states of mind. Yeah. I'll say that. And there's an element of empathy with that, you know? So the things that we talk about to our students, especially, it's obviously pertinent to anything they do as a nurse. But I think you hit it on the head when it's the simplest thing, just to set the tone for the day. when you first
Yeah.
interact with people, right?
Yeah.
Man. As an instructor now, I mean, did you want to be an instructor?
You know, if we go all the way back, I can remember as early as, say, I don't know, second or third grade. Yeah. So how old was that? Like
way
7, like 8 years old or something like that. Where I thought like, oh, teaching looks fun, and the thought, lingered grade school, junior high school, but I eventually picked up the thought that teachers don't make a lot of money, and especially like high school teachers, public school, decent money, but not spectacular money. I was looking for something more than that. So yeah, then that's pretty much how I kind of fell into nursing. Well, a few different reasons. And to help people was one of them, but maybe not like the dominant factor in that decision. But my parents would tell you that's why I wanted to be a nurse, because I want to help people, but which is true. But at the time, okay, 17-year-old Ed, right? 17, coming out of high school, Ed, did not really know what he wanted to do with his life, did not even think too deeply about it, just kind of wanted to keep the party going, to be honest, right? End of high school, there's a lot of euphoria, right? Like, oh my gosh, we're so big now, we're adults now. And so I just, especially with my older brother, he was like 2 years older than me, seeing that he went to college, he's on a dance team, he's been, lives in a dorm, doing all this awesome stuff. So I just kind of wanted to keep the party going. And I knew that like, if I picked nursing, that would kind of cover me on a few different bases, right? Like parents will be happy and excited.
Yeah.
I do like the sciences of nursing. I do like helping people. I do love that it's a cultural preference, right?
Yeah.
I do like that a lot of I'd likely run into a lot of cute Filipino girls going this route too, which what do you know, kind of went right according to plan, where I found wifey. But yeah, so I fell into nursing, and I knew that it would be, I knew I'd enjoy it, and I knew that more or less my career and life, so to speak, would be straightforward, kind of simple, and I don't know, I'd be happy and content. I knew that much by choosing nursing, but I wasn't like die-hard nursing, when I kind of was finishing high school.
And in nursing school, I mean, we come across good instructors and some maybe not so good. But
that's the truth.
But I think as a nurse educator, especially, like we have this rapport with our students. And I think there's some instructors that, in the program that we were in, it was pretty young. It was starting up, and we have a few instructors that I'm sure resonated with you. I mean, we can shout them
Definitely.
out. Definitely. Either way, it's you make that rapport with the students, and then I mean, I look back, and I'm sure you look back, and you realize which ones really affected you.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's part of your inspiration.
Yeah. And just seeing, through all these awesome clinical instructors, how they were enjoying it. They made us feel good. They're part of our growth process. They're part of our success. And they looked like they're just having fun and kicking butt while doing it, and making good money as a nurse, and low stress.
Yeah.
How it looked to me that clinical instructing was low stress. And that was always, so that's when I put it on my, career plan, game plan, to-do list. Like, oh, this looks fun, low stress, good money. I did not plan on teaching in the classroom at all, to be honest. Yeah, while I was doing, still in my undergrad. Even, after graduating, I applied for West Coast as a clinical instructor, got it, and then as part-time, because the game plan was like, oh, maybe I'll work 3/12s in the hospital, and then like once a week clinical instructing, and we'd be, kicking butt, doing big things. That was the game plan. But 2 weeks before my first term teaching, this was summer 2016, the dean asked, called me in and said like, hey, our theory instructor's like retiring, like gone, like we got nobody. Would you please like do theory for us too? And yeah, that was a wild moment. I just said yeah, like sure, like I'm your guy. Yeah. And I walked out of that office.
The rest is history.
Yeah,
bro.
and I was like, crap, what the hell did I sign up for? To be honest. But
young and naive to the role. I'm sure, dude. If I wouldn't even know, I didn't know that you were a clinical first. I thought you jumped into theory right away. But
yeah, I applied for just clinical.
Wow.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was 2016. At that time, I was working at ACC, as our NCLEX instructor. And then I remember getting that text from you. I'm like, oh man, I haven't talked to Ed in like years since nursing school, or since we worked together at that one hospital.
Yeah.
And I jumped on it right away. And I think the rest is history, man. I think I don't know who's going to listen to this, but I would say that we were probably the dynamic duo in the mental health program, man.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
For a good, like, from 2016 to at least before the pandemic, man.
Yeah.
And a lot of students have, you know, reached out even after graduating, and they've said the most amazing things. But I think when you have two instructors that are, and I'm not saying other instructors don't, but we definitely stick out a little bit.
No, I gotta pause this because I gotta say before I forget this thought that like partnering with you, I just felt unstoppable. Like, oh, you know, like, I got like LeBron on my team. Like, like doesn't matter what the project is. Like we're about to like mop this up. We're going to destroy this. And that's what it feels like to work with you. And that's a really awesome thing, just to like, I don't know, I felt real empowered, man.
No, I appreciate that. Dude. I think when you have instructors that genuinely love what they do, and again, like you pointed out earlier, that the focus was in serving people. Mm-hmm. Everything else is just process, dude. You can train people to do certain things, but I think the character that we always brought was like, we want to make this better. Why? It's not just to be known to make it better, but to make it better for the students.
Yeah.
And in turn, I think that's our service, to serve the students, which in turn will serve in a greater purpose on the floor, right? Mm-hmm. That's how we all look at it. So I appreciate it. I'm going to argue that's not definitely not LeBron when it comes to nursing instructing, but I think us as a dynamic duo, dude, we were unstoppable. I'm not going to lie, man. And it's funny because a lot of my students, like, they know that we go way back, and they're like, yeah, are you guys brothers? I'm like, pretty much. Pretty much.
Agreed.
But no, I mean, now, like, being in nurse education or whatever, do you have any plans to go further in nursing?
I do not. And here's kind of like, well, a big other conversation, but I'll kick it off. I'd say, you know, when I was, you know, a young nurse, you know, mid-20s, double degreed, you know, like the world was very much mine. Like anything I wanted to do, I could do it. And, you know, the mentality was, I'm going to change the world. I am changing the world. I'm having a big impact. And I'm taking over, right? I'm living life and I'm taking over, which is an awesome energy. And it was amazing. I don't have that same energy now. And I've had a big shift, in how I approach life now, to be honest. So now, and it pretty much all started when, we started to grow our family. How to put this? I can definitely say that growing a family is taking a lot more time and energy, mental capacity, brain power, stress, discipline, willpower. It's taking a lot more of everything that I could have ever imagined. So I have a lot less of myself and all of that to put towards career advancement. And I'm okay with that. Because again, before it was just like, oh, I need to jump higher. I need to reach higher. I need to pull myself up and up and up. More degrees. Yeah. And through the recent years, you know, my son's a little more than 2 years old now. Done a lot of reflecting as I've seen that, like, I don't have the motivation to go get another degree or to push myself higher. And, you know, at first I felt real bad. Like, oh, why don't I feel this anymore? My whole life I felt like I have to keep going. I have to keep climbing. And I don't feel this way anymore. And I felt bad for myself. Like, I can't think of the right emotion, but I felt like, I don't know, less of myself. But through a lot of reflecting and a lot of YouTubing on different, you know, worldviews and different psychological ways of thinking and viewing life, it's not something to feel bad about, that I'm not reaching anymore. So that I'm okay with. I'm not mad about it. And it was actually quite relieving when I thought to myself, like, that I don't need another degree, and I respect everyone who does want more and keep reaching more. Again, it's an amazing energy, and it you pushes yourself further.
Of course.
But growing a family now is more or less the center of my view on how approach to life. So I'm seeing my career as maybe not even a career, yeah, but less of a career and more of like, hey, this is something I enjoy doing roughly 40 hours a week. That is also a means to an end, a way to pay bills, a way to save, a way to grow my family too, but not so much like, oh, I need to keep advancing my career. It's more of just, that might have come off a bit jumbled, but I might be able to add a little more.
Not at all, dude.
It made somewhat sense.
You know what? No, it makes perfect sense. And I honestly think that I went through the same thing when you start a family. I think I've heard it before too, that it made me, for one, rethink, like, do I want to start a family at some point? Because I heard someone say that when a guy gets married and he has a kid, his first child, a part of him dies, right? And the psychology of it and all that stuff, like, of course, as a young man, I know what it's like, that feeling that you had. It's like, it's what I would call warrior mode, right? Where anything in front of me, I'm going to kill it. And then conquer this next thing, conquer this next mountain or something. Yeah. And we've all been there. And you're right, dude. When I got married, it's almost like I felt like personally, I didn't want to put my foot on the gas as much anymore. Like, why? I mean, maybe because you start reflecting on ourselves. And I would argue now that we have kids, it's you realize that you're living for more than yourself, right? And not to say that people that are going for those degrees, right? I'm not saying that that's like they're selfish or whatever. It's more of everyone's on their own path. But definitely I felt like, I mean, it came up so many times. Like students would ask me, my coworkers would ask me, like, are you going for your NP? Are you going for your doctorate? And I'm like, honestly, no, I don't think I need it. In the vocation that I now have, and you know, nursing as a vocation, obviously that's such a good service. When I started my family, my vocation became to be the best father I could be, you know? And I think that's why dude, it's nothing crazy at all. To me, I've talked to a lot of fathers, especially young dads, and there is that shift. And for me, the most important thing, I think you would agree, is, you know, is my family safe? Do we have everything that we need? What else do we need so that you can provide it, right? Dude, I totally resonate with that. It's the same exact thing that I've gone through. Wild,
man. I feel less alone, and I feel less crazy, less guilty for giving up on the dream, so to speak. But that's kind of being dramatic. Letting off the gas a bit. Yeah, I feel less guilty about letting off the gas, man. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, because when I heard that, like, part of you dies, it's almost like, well, hey, self-preservation, right? That's the first thing I thought. I was like, what the hell?
Yeah.
But part of you dies. I think part of you dies because you have to bring more life to the world. And how do we do that? With our kids, right? Yeah. So that part of you that died is worth sacrificing for the thing that you're actually bringing now.
And part of you's born.
Yeah, dude. I mean, being a dad, I mean, Ethan, yeah. He's over 2 now. What has the change been like, though? Honestly, I'm all in on being a father now. Like, I love family. This is it. There's a lot at play here. But I will say something that I value a lot higher, like in the top shelf, right next to family, and it's time, my time, and what happens to my time. And I feel like when I get stressed out is when I feel like I'm losing time, or when I get frustrated or irritated. And so when it comes to raising a kid, you find yourself, it sucks a lot of time out of you. Not that it's wasted, but you find yourself having to do mundane stuff that, you know, in the moment it just feels like such a drain and such a drag. Yeah. If it's simple as, like,
putting him to sleep, right? When the dang kid does not want to nap, and you're trying to put him to sleep, and 15 minutes rolls by, half an hour of cradling him, shushing him, and an hour rolls by, and you just want to like bang your head on the wall or something. And I just feel like, where's my time gone? Like what I could have done with this time for myself, for my hobbies, and then now just compound that to like a dozen different, infant or toddler related activities every day. Oh yeah. So the challenge was kind of overcoming that thought of like, I'm wasting my time, because I'm not wasting my time. You're raising a kid, but it just feels like your time's being wasted at times.
And I think that's what I remind myself, that there's no other time other than right now when they're this age. Because when they get older, it's over. Arguably, like your son turns 18, you can move out if he wants to, whatever, and we can never get these years back. Which is why I know it demands so much from us. Like you said, like the smallest thing. It's funny when you try to put them to sleep and they keep crying. And like I told Gracie this, I was like, I'm not crazy, okay? I'm not crazy. But there's this thing that happens when I feel like they're crying and I can't get them to stop crying. It's not necessarily aggression to the kid, but it's like, I feel like I'm gonna like bash my head against the wall or something, right? Yeah. And then, you dive into fatherhood and the things that change, like hormones change when you're a father or whatever. And I was like, that aggression, that aggressive feeling, again, not towards the family, towards the kid, to your wife, but it's like this innate thing inside that it's almost like I hear a baby cry and like my energy picks up. Like maybe it's the need to protect or whatever, like someone's getting hurt maybe. And I when you said like, you just want to bang my head against the wall, dude, that it feels like that, which is crazy to think, because I would argue that we had a lot of things kept together, like being a mental health nurse, especially, we try to practice what we preach, right? Yeah. But I think you would resonate with me when I say, when I became a father, it was almost like I unlearned all my coping techniques, man.
Oh man.
Things changed.
But to add on to that, what I realized too, is that I have never experienced this much stress, like at all. Like it made NCLEX look like it was a piece of paper homework kind of thing. Like the stress that I was being hit with now, compounded with the lack of sleep, that you don't know. I think we're all a different person with less sleep. And Ethan was a crier, a middle of the night crier. It was like 3 a.m. every day that he'd wake up, and it was just straight to like fire alarm cry, and that broke me. And then so I forgot all my coping skills and could not cope with this crazy amount of stress. I
don't think anybody can prepare for what parenthood is gonna challenge you to do. I don't think you can prepare for it, to be honest with you. No matter what people told us, like, oh, you're not gonna sleep enough, you're not gonna whatever, until you're actually in it and through it, or going through it right now, I don't think anybody's prepared for it. I think but it will challenge you to the point of you don't know yourself, maybe.
Sleep deprivation is a torture tactic. Let's all Google that. It really is. That's how they get info out of people now. And I, for a long time, I had this bitterness because my mom said, "Oh, having kids is amazing. It's so easy. It's so legit." She would say, "It's easy. It's easy." So I went into it, and so I was so bitter for the longest time, and actually. For like the last year, I had like a life goal of telling all new couples, newlyweds, or those like about to have kids, to impress upon them that it's extremely, extremely, extremely hard, because that was never impressed upon me. It's different when someone says like, oh, it's tough. Oh, you're not going to sleep, right? And it's always said with this tone of, you're laughing about it, kind of playful tone. And that's why I never took it seriously. And that's my fault partly too. But, so I've had this life mission of telling people with the appropriate tone, like, hey, this is going to break you. This is the hardest thing ever. Okay. So I just want you to know that going in. And so I've done so with several friends, and I was like, I'm only gonna say this once, and I'm only gonna use this tones once, and then I'll go back to being normal. But like, I want you to know, because I wish I knew this was hell. And then like, congrats. Cause my homie just got They're pregnant.
They're pregnant now.
Yeah. So
it's you can't hide it now, especially like when you hear or you see people get married and then or they get pregnant or they're about to start a family. I think there's an element of being positive about things, but like you said, when people minimize like the hardship of it, it's almost like, all right, this is kind of fantasy now. Like, I mean, at that point, it's not honest. I think the biggest thing when I put content out about family, about fatherhood, motherhood, parenthood in general, I think people do crave the reality of it. They crave the honest, hard truths about it, and I think through that honesty is the beauty of it, though, because I think it gives you more to know that you've gone through certain things and that you do have a life that you're responsible for. For me, the greatest blessings are in the hardest things. And I'm the same way, man. Like if I know someone is having a child, I'm excited, of course. But then there's that element of, hey, dude, like it's more than hard. Okay. It's a place where you've never been. You likely not know yourself anymore, but the person who does come out of it, the person you're going to become, is the father that you never knew, And I think a lot of things, the way I look at family especially, is there is no other vocation in life other than to raise a family in this new generation. And all that self-care, coping skills or whatever I thought were gone, you can access them, maybe down in the basement of yourself or something. And then you start implementing it. I'm sure over the last 2 years, you've been able to come back to who Ed was before, a child, but combine him with who you are now as a father, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah. It's it's felt really good to get a lot of myself back after like spiraling so low. It was the first time that I had to go see a therapist. Ethan was like he was around 1, and then it got to that point where like whenever he even like started to whine just a little bit, like the rage just built up, and I was like no good to nobody, especially my family. And so thankfully wifey would really back me. I was like, yeah, let's go, go talk to somebody. And talking with someone definitely helped. Seeing a therapist definitely helped. But what I found out was I was not doing the basic things I needed to stay in a good mental space. I wasn't getting enough sleep. I wasn't eating well. I wasn't doing the things in life that were enjoyable. So that's why life felt like just a shift that never ended, right? And on top of you're working 40 hours, and then coming back home, so it just felt like work. So what definitely had the biggest impact? Well, it was great to talk to a therapist to kind of help reset and reground, but what I needed to get back going to the gym, I needed to. And crazy thing about doing fun stuff, I need to go back seeing friends and hanging out. When I going back to time, I felt like I didn't have time for these things anymore. Like I have to take care of my kid. I have to relieve my wife. She's the one at home with him all the time. I have to relieve her. I got to do as much as I can. So what ended up dropping off my schedule was sleep and play. And that's actually the stuff that helps keep you sane in a lot of it, and keeps you again in a good space to be the best for your family. So when I finally started, working out again, I finally started, asking my wife, we're working together, but like, hey, I think I need to sleep in the other room like every other night. We co-sleep, right? Ethan's in the middle of us. Yeah. And he would wake up so much, and I felt guilty for asking to sleep in the other room because it was happening to her too, but she wasn't losing her mind. So it made me feel like, is there something wrong with me? Am I weaker? Can I not just hang? Can I not kick it? Like what? How come I can't? How come I'm about to explode? Right? And I'm supposed to be, the man, the rock. But all these thoughts were not the right thoughts. And the right thought is, if you ever like an issue or a problem, handle it, find out what's causing it, address it, and then get back to being, as best as you can. So I had some barriers to going to therapy and barriers to taking care of myself, right? Like, I'm like, oh no, I need to sacrifice more of my time, my sleep, my play to give more to Ethan, to give more to my wife, right? So that she could rest. But I just went overboard. I just sacrificed too much of myself. And so getting that back to a better balance, like changed everything for sure. Well, we're not all above water, but it definitely
I got you.
got me back to a stable mentality.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure before you had a family, you were this superhuman guy that you felt like you're unstoppable. I've felt that too. But again, it strips you down to your core and it will challenge you, right? So I personally have seen it too, like in Gracie. Like I truly believe that there is an element of being a mother that I'll never understand. Mm-hmm. And they just have this extra ounce of energy, this extra ounce of patience for a child, and there's something I can't deny about that.
Yeah,
you know, like the way that my kids are with Gracie and with their mom, it's something I could never even provide them. And I think I've been to that place where I felt like I was losing my mind too, man. Where it's like you're doing way too much, but then you think back to who you were before and you're like, but I'm used to doing too much. Like I'm actually in my element when I'm doing too much. Like what's wrong, right? Mm-hmm. And again, like you said, there's nothing wrong with you, right? But you're in a realm and a new battleground that you never knew existed until you're actually the father now. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing, weak about seeking help or whatever. Obviously we know that, mm-hmm. But I think it's maybe pride in us too, where it's like, well, I shouldn't have to do that. Like why, I help people that do go through this, but all of a sudden I have to get therapy. Dude, there's no shame with that. Yeah. But then it's that narrative we tell ourselves.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And no, exactly. And I thought to myself too, one thought that was preventing me from seeing a therapist, I was like, oh, but I'm the psych instructor. What if my students find out? What if people find out like, oh, the psych nurse, the board certified mental health nurse needs psych help? Like, what's that is that gonna hurt my credibility? And then what really helped me flip that, my older brother and my other brother, they go see coaches, right? Life coaches, mm-hmm. right? And they read these self-help books. And especially my brother, who I think is like one of the people that I just see has it together and more control than like almost anybody I know, like is level-headed and like can handle anything. Finding out that he reads self-help books and that he goes to these seminars and to find out, and then he'll feel, LeBron has a coach, Kobe had a mental health coach, presidents have coaches, have life coaches. And that really helped me break that wall down. Like, who am I to think that I don't need a coach or therapist or someone to just help me organize this upstairs? Yeah. So I want to continue spreading like, hey, nobody's too big for some coaching or therapy. No one's too big, and it can be helpful to everybody. Yeah.
And it's funny because these talks almost turned into therapy sessions for me too, because you relate to people and you're like, oh, it wasn't just me. And I think that's the most thing I've gotten from a podcast like this, where it's like I talk to people about certain things that don't necessarily come up in the everyday thing, mm-hmm. or if I'm at a party with people, like these conversations don't necessarily come up. Yeah. And it kind of created this space for me of being like to I guess unite with people that I know, people that I'm close to or whatever, and acknowledging that, hey, it's okay, dude. Like life is hard. And maybe I looked for that because as a nurse educator, when you're with your students, you're responsible for them. And like you said, like, are they going to look at me differently if, for me, it was more of, I don't want that personal hardship to leak into what I'm actually doing for them. It shouldn't affect them, nor should they care about what I'm going through. As a nurse, as an educator, that's what we hold, mm-hmm. right? It's almost like that shouldn't come out in my service. But it does, when you do that, it's almost like you wear yourself down because you're taking too much. And, I vent a lot, and I would argue my therapist is my wife. A lot of the time we talk about a lot of things, and it's like, being a mental health nurse for one shift, you could get cussed out a handful of times, called all the names in the book, treated like dirt or whatever. And yet what do? We smile through it. We continue our service because that's what we sacrifice. And then, let's say now as a father, you get home and you got to be the dad. How do you find that balance? Because now all that aggression that I stopped, to take, my patients into consideration, what they're going through, have empathy for them. And then you get home and then you got to deal with all this. You have to have that channel. And for you, it was like working out, and even seeking therapy, whatever it is. You need that channel, that the ability to discharge that energy healthily.
Yeah.
Have that, you know, I'm going to throw it out there too, like sublimation, all that stuff, right?
Heck yeah.
And it's one of those things that I think a lot of people, because, and myself included, a lot because of pride, say, oh no, yeah, I'm good, I have it together. But one can only handle so much, you know. And I think that this is a useful conversation because I don't think a lot of our students even know how well you keep it together. I think they would know if any of them watch this, obviously. They see you as this guy that's on the screen, maybe on a Zoom meeting or in front of the classroom.
Yeah.
Hyper energetic, super positive.
Yeah.
But beneath that surface, I think it's important to know that, hey, this is another human that's going through it too, and he's dealing with it. You know, and I think that's a message that a lot of people could use now, especially in our world today. You know, I mean, speaking about the state of mental health, I think we are a big supporter. We're big supporters of mental health. We're mental health advocates, especially as instructors, right? Mm-hmm. We affect nursing in our little way, but hopefully to break that stigma. I remember you would always tell your students that, like, we're here to break the stigma of mental health.
Yeah.
Where do you think the state of mental health is, man?
Yeah, this is a big one. And oof. So if I may, I actually wanted your 2 cents on this first, because when I ask, and this is just an in general question that I have for everybody, that I like everyone's input on. It's not really a party topic, but a question that I'd like to hear everyone's input on is like, hey, firstly, would you agree that kind of mental health in America in general has kind of gotten a bit worse? There's like more depression, more anxiety, not like by a wide margin, but like, would you say that there's at least a little bit more anxiety and depression, you know, going on, and substance abuse, whatever, in our nation than say 10 years ago? And then just about everyone says like, yeah, I would think so. So the follow-up is like, what do you think's contributing to that? Like, go.
Oh
Let
man.
me hear it.
Oh man.
5 to 10 years, right?
I think there's well, because we've worked in mental health since 2012, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've arguably seen the whole change over the last how many years? The last 10 years, if anything.
Yeah.
11, coming up on 11 this year. I think there's so many things contributing to the change in mental health, and I don't want to just say it's a bad thing, like mental health's getting worse. But I think, for one, we broke the stigma. We tried to break the stigma of, instead of sweeping it under the rug. The challenge with that now is that it's out in the open. So maybe we finally exposed it, how bad it really is. But I honestly, in the last 10 years, dude, I think I've been thinking about this a lot too. I feel like we broke the stigma of it, but I would say that there's maybe a handful of people that might be, I hate even saying this word, but hijacking mental health to use it as an excuse to not perform well anymore.
Okay.
But also, romanticizing mental health a little too much. And when we teach mental health, especially, like, there's an element of that reality, and like, we have to focus on this. We have to talk about these things. But there's a line where, are we over romanticizing it now? That now it's like, everybody like is saying, I mean,
that I have something.
Yeah. And like, you should go easy on me or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's also like it's now, if we have too many people, and I would even say that we've seen maybe people at their worst in the hospital, especially. Like, I've seen anxiety. Like, I've seen people that are more than severely depressed, trying to hurt themselves, kill themselves. I've seen extreme psychosis. You've seen it. And then you come out to, like, whatever society, community, and then there's some people that, you know, like, say, oh, you know, I have anxiety.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It's like, well, I've seen anxiety.
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
I've seen people scratching their face off because of anxiety. And it's like, maybe too many of us, myself included, are using mental health as like a shield from the hardship of life. And I think if too many people do that, it ends up naturally happening where you're kind of diluting the help that people really need.
Yeah.
Like the mental health help that people need, you know? So I don't know, like, that's my take on it.
Yeah.
The past 11 years being in and working in mental health. So
man, we are on the same page again. And it's so funny because, like, you know, some of these thoughts, none of my family's in the mental health space. It's just me and wifey. And like, I might have said something like this to her, that like, yeah, I feel like, you know, it's kind of getting watered down, right?
There you go.
And you know, silver lining about, you know, as I'm scrolling through whatever TikTok or something, and it's like, oh hey, there's all these like better help apps, or like, hey, oh, these are the signs of ADHD. Maybe you have it and you didn't know. And I'm like, cool, great to see the resources, right? The new avenues for resources. But I definitely feel like, and this is just a vibe, right? Just a feeling, not a lot of statistics behind it, but that there's people saying that they have it, but they don't really have it, right? That they're going through hardship, or they have just more difficulty concentrating, right, and staying attentive, and they think that they have ADHD, and so help me explain. I wanted to go deeper on this because, like, so what's the problem here? But so because we do want to help when you know it's a diagnosable disorder, which, you know, there's gray area there because, you know, we as a society draw the line, and it's the doctor who says where and when. But anyways, but probably the reason why we need to say you don't have it when you don't have it, right, is because, like you said, if you're using a pill to get you to be able to get through this, then it's almost like you're not able to grow and do it yourself. You're not able to build the skills that you need yourself. Instead, you're using, you know, a supplement or a crutch to help you. And, you know, it's cool if the game plan is like, oh, I'll use this to kickstart my growth, to get more attentive, right? If we're talking ADHD. I'll use it to help me, but like, if this is the end all be all, like I'm just gonna take the pill for the rest of my life.
Be dependent on it,
right? Being dependent on it, it's not gonna help. So we're taking away the opportunity for somebody to grow, and to get the skills they need to overcome, you know, the inattentiveness or whatnot, right? And this kind of goes into the same idea with anxiety or depression, like, you got to learn the skills so you don't have to be dependent on medication or something else. But
no, you know, I think the conversation about stuff like this is very delicate. I mean, and I hate even thinking that, like, oh, we have a right to talk about this because we've been working in mental health for 11 years. Like, that doesn't really earn us the right either. But it's that I think where our perspective is, especially with science and like in the nursing field. I mean, we've medicated how many people, like especially emergency PRN medication. And I would always try to explain to the students that, you know, there's always a business side in nursing. I get it, you know, and then like you said, like there's apps now, there's people like, you know, available 24/7, which is a good resource. When I think the biggest thing is when we talk about mental health disorders, there's a different threshold of interventions that we need to do, right? When someone is disordered, we have to think about functionality, like the day-to-day functioning. That doesn't minimize that people go through anxiety in life. We all have anxiety, right? Which is a good thing. You're anxious about certain things. Mild anxiety actually helps you perform. But it's how to manage it. But like you said, if you turn to a pill every time or a substance every time, and then now you don't, like, you are limited in your capacity to actually let your body itself grow to being someone that can manage it. I think that's a very detrimental. You
said it a lot more elegant than I did. No, it's beautiful. No, that's exactly how I'm feeling. And it's nuts that you're saying, like, this is a delicate thing to talk about.
It is.
And I don't want to come off like, oh, you guys are just crying wolf or whatever you're describing. Not the case. We just want to, again, empower and just like let you reflect, right? Again, it's ultimately your choice to whoever's listening, right? To whoever's considering taking medication, right? But just I would just hope, right? It's all from a good place that you consider, like, what is your game plan? Is your game plan to be dependent on this pill, or do you want to be independent, right? So just take a moment to think about that before starting various treatments.
And I think that speaks to, like, I mentioned earlier, like, we've, give medications obviously in our work, right? I've seen the benefit of it. Like, I've seen the benefit of certain substances even outside of the hospital that help people manage it. I think that's just the beginning, though.
Yeah.
I truly don't believe that someone should be on medication forever unless it's an actual disorder that they cannot find that everyday functionality, right? But I think medications are useful in a sense of managing, this current moment, this current state that you're in. You can manage it in order to focus on building the actual physical, mental health through the practices we're talking about right now. Maybe natural remedies, maybe working out, exercise.
Yeah.
Get into your body when you're exercising.
Yeah.
And I think if I would even say, like, there's so many things that could be solved in this world if people just focused on getting physically healthy. That in turn will help your mental health.
Yeah.
And I think that would help your spiritual health and your soul, emotional health, right? But because we're so eager to just jump at the quickest solution, it's a lot easier just to take this pill rather than do the hard work that it takes. To a lot of people, that would just be more enticing. I get it.
Yeah, and I'm guilty too. Right? I'm not saying that I'm above this.
We're all,
but it's just for everyone to know. Like, let's just take a second to reflect on when we choose these things that are more of the quick fix than the long term improvement. And again, quick fix is great to jumpstart you. Right, whether it's a month or 6 months or a year, medication, whatnot, to help you on your journey, but focus on the journey and the overall improvement. So aside from that, I want to add, put on the table, community or lack thereof, I think has been hurting us in general too, like our mental health. COVID played a big role, right? Nobody can hang out, and I feel like we're just social people, right? Our culture, it's very enjoyable to, we love to socialize, whether it's football games, it's church, it's going to the movies, it's going bowling, it's going out and hanging out with people, right? That was just a source of filling up our cup and just feeling, for our mental health. And then we lost a lot of that, through COVID. And then on top of that, enter all this political nonsense or all the hectic, divisive, influencers out there that are trying to rip community apart or at least put it, you're on one side or the other. So now everybody hates each other. Yeah. Right. And so I feel like that's really got us in a tough spot, as a society, as a culture, and it's leading to, more anxiety, more depression, more hatred. But
I totally agree, man. We're being divided on so many different things that we get distracted, and then you realize there are things out there that I can't control, and in turn, when I'm getting, whatever it is, confused about something, irritated about something else that's happening thousands of miles away, it affects me in my home with my family. And it's like, that shouldn't happen, with community and society and everything like that. Especially now, I look at things differently because I became a dad. I think about the next generation in a sense of like, what world are my girls going to grow up in?
Yeah.
Is it going to be a divided world? That's what I worry.
Yeah.
And I think what we're talking about right now is not to divide, like, oh, there's people with mental health and then there's people that don't have it, but it's not that. And I think you're not saying that either. It's more of, we have to acknowledge that this exists.
Yeah.
And that everybody is dealing with something, but people have been dealing with something for generations. Yeah. This is what we're talking about. So like when we say, mental health awareness, a big thing for me was awareness is simply the first step. The question is, how do you deal with that now? How do you take care of your mental health, the mental health of your family, your friends, being aware and recognizing signs? Like what is my bias in mental health? Because I worked in mental health. Mm-hmm. There's a bias because people that worked in mental health, maybe some people have gotten injured. So now they tell their kids, hey man, I worked in mental health, like this person like smacked me in the face, I lost vision or something. Like stay away from people like that. And that in turn is that the right thing to tell people, right? And we've been treated differently our whole lives. Like maybe in mental health especially, we were called names or were treated less than human sometimes. The question is, you as the gatekeeper of that, how do you, like, what is your bias towards mental health? What is our bias towards mental health? And how can we still hold it up as important, mm-hmm. but not over fantasize about it, over romanticize it, right? And I think everybody has to challenge themselves with that. What is my bias in mental health? Oof. And awareness is simply the first step. Like, you're aware of it now, then what do you do? What action do you take because of that?
Yeah.
Right. And I think a lot of people need to ask themselves that.
Yeah.
You know, that's my take on what mental health is now.
Yeah, man, what a big question. What is your bias? I love that. I'm gonna be thinking about that. That's gonna keep me up tonight. What is your bias?
You know, it's funny because this is something that came up in the middle of the pandemic when I started the podcast. I forgot what episode it was, but it was Mental Health Awareness Month, and you know, you see it everywhere, like, you know, banners and flags and all this stuff, and it's like mental health awareness. It made me think about it at that time, and I did create a podcast episode. I forgot what it was, like episode 11 or something. And I listed out like the different biases that I felt like were out here in the world. I mean, I'm not going to go through all of them, but like mental health, like I think I titled the episode, it was mental health awareness, and I crossed out the word awareness and I put mental health, do we even care-ness? And it's like, how do people, like some people look at mental health of like, oh, like avoid it, like the plague. Like I called it mental health beware-ness, right? Like, oh, be careful, like, you know, stay away from it. Yeah. And then there's that mental health. I think I can't, what did I call it? Mental health flare-ness, where it's like you're over celebrating it now, you know, and and again, it dilutes, it waters down actually what these people need, what people need as help.
Yeah.
And it's just that self-assessment. I think that's the one message I tell my students every time a new term starts. I tell them that this is the perfect opportunity for you to assess yourself. Not to say that you have mental health issues, but we all are dealing with life, right? Stress. How do you deal with stress? But also, like, are you really taking care of yourself? You don't want it to be too late. And I always tell them when we're at the clinical side, especially, like, you will see people where it might be too late for them. You have your own body, mind, spirit, and soul. Ask yourself, like, am I really taking care of myself? In order to prevent getting so far that you've burned bridges in your family, your relationships with people, and ultimately you want to go through nursing school in general, you want to go through whatever vocation, to strengthen that bond between you and your closest people, your family, your friends, your community. How do you bring people together now? That's the challenge. Because you, like you said, dude, the world is trying. I think there's this very deep and, dare I say, even spiritual thing that's happening where a lot of people are just using emotions and things like, we can talk about crazy stuff that's happened in the world, but they're using those moments and situations and circumstances to divide. It takes us, you know, as friends, as coworkers, as fathers, to unite and bring people together now. I think that would be the biggest calling now in the divided world. It's scary. It's scary stuff, man.
Man, that's wow. Wow, that's heavy, and that is important, and that's relevant, and that's, oh man, that would do it.
You have a very important role, dude. I mean, and I say that coming from someone who has my little corner in the place that we work, and I know we resonate in the sense of, like, you come across people, especially our students. I mean, at this point, we've interacted with thousands of students, thousands of patients, thousands of students. I would love to believe that, you know, we made our little impact. And like you said, now, like, you know, instead of running up the hill for tackling new credentials and all this stuff, imagine you channeling all that energy into your family and actually raising, you know, we're raising our kids to not like be like us, but to have an understanding of life, you know, and I would safely assume that, you know, our kids especially would benefit from us being mental health nurses, nurse educators, and serving in our little way. Right?
Yeah.
So, you know, it's funny because, I mean, dude, you brought up questions I never thought you would ask me, to be honest. We work together I mean, obviously this is not, these aren't things that we like, that I bring up a lot to my students or whatever.
Yeah,
but
it's some heavy stuff. Yeah.
It's some heavy stuff that, and there is no real answer. That's the thing.
Yeah.
This is just our take on it.
Right.
But I know you were one of the, I mean, I've asked you, it was like over a year or two ago. Like, I was like, I want you on the podcast, man. But I know, like, we're all going through our own things at certain times.
Yeah.
And shout out to one of my students. It was like, I think it was fall of last year. shout out to Ali. I told him, like, he was one of the few that asked me about the podcast, and I was like, oh shoot, my students are catching wind that I have a podcast. So it was like early in the term, and he was like, hey, do you have a podcast? I was like, oh shoot. I was like, maybe I do. But then I told him, like, you know what? Like, I was like, who do you have for theory?
Yeah.
He's like, I have Alfonso. I was like, dude, honestly, I've been trying to get Alfonso on the podcast. And Ali told me, he's like, man, if you get Alfonso on the podcast, you guys might break the internet. So shout out to him. I mean, I doubt we're gonna break the internet, but but I'm grateful to have you on the podcast, dude. I feel like this hour just breezed by. I say it all the time. It's funny, but I truly believe this is the first of many. And I'll probably talk to you about it after. But any final thoughts about anything, man? Is there anything that you felt like you needed to get off your chest?
Geez, man, that's a good question too. It's very interesting. Like, I feel very much like I'm presented with a platform at this moment.
The smallest platform in the world.
Yeah, no, but it's interesting. It's a nice position to be in. And I'm reminded of this question that for fun, maybe as like an icebreaker question to, like, as I'm meeting new students, be like, right, if the worst happened, you got hit by a car, right? What's, and you can only have one quote, one mantra on your tombstone, like, what would it be, kind of thing, right? What's something that you'd kind of that you'd like the world to think about a bit more? So yeah, I very feel like this is a version of that question, like, hey, what else do you want to say to the world out there, kind of thing. Man, yeah, just let's be good and kind to one another. Be good and kind. And actually, I'm glad I remembered this. There's one word that I'm growing a very strong affinity for, and it's the word civility. Civility. Wow. And there's your dictionary definitions of it, but civility. One way I've seen it phrased is disagreement without disrespect. And I think that is something we need very much here and everywhere. Be able to live with each other, with a sense of understanding and with a sense of respect, knowing and acknowledging the big differences in perspective, in life, in goals, in dreams, in political views, in just everything. Just be able to disagree without disrespect. Yeah. And if I were to get a tattoo, which I probably never will, it might be that word, civility. And that would be on my tombstone. But yeah.
Holy shit. That's one hell of a way to end the podcast, bro. Thank you for being here, bro.
A pleasure. Let's do it again sometime.
Yeah, we will. We definitely will.
Jeez.
Thank you.